Okay, let's dive right into today's explainer, because we're unpacking a fascinating and honestly deeply concerning issue buried right in the heart of urban real estate. Welcome. So, in incredibly dense cities like Mumbai, where land is practically non-existent and the buildings are getting older by the minute, redevelopment is constantly pitched as this ultimate silver bullet. The pitch is simple. You trade in your old, dilapidated apartment, and in return, you get a shiny, modern, super spacious new one. Sounds like a total win-win, right? Well, as we're about to see from the data and the source material, for way too many people, this so-called dream turns into a decade-long nightmare of sleepless nights, broken contracts, and totally empty promises.
We have to start by grounding this in the devastating human reality behind all these big real estate deals. Just take a second and really think about this heartbreaking reality from Sai Prakash, a displaced resident. He literally gave up an ancestral home that his grandfather built, a place holding generations of memories. And now, years later, he's forced into renting, and his family property has, for all intents and purposes, completely vanished. Look, this isn't just about a construction schedule slipping a few months. This is about entire families left completely in limbo, with no roof over their heads, watching their primary life asset turn into an abandoned, waterlogged pit.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Stolen homes, broken promises. 2. The scale of the crisis. 3. The redevelopment business model. 4. Why projects stall. And finally, 5. Blueprint for a safe rebuild. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. Stolen homes, broken promises, the human cost of stalled rebuilds.
There is this absolutely glaring contrast right at the heart of this whole issue. On one hand, you've got the very real vulnerability of aging structures. Think weathered walls, leaking roofs, hanging laundry. And right next to that, you have developers mounting these massive charm offensives. They come in with glossy pitches, promising glitzy skyscrapers, way larger carpet areas, generous rental payouts while you wait, and massive corpus funds. For an aging housing society, it looks like a desperately needed, almost miraculous pathway to a better lifestyle.
But let's look at how those shiny promises actually pan out in the real world. The contrast between what builders promised certain societies in Juhu and Mulund back in 2010 versus the incredibly sobering 16-year reality they're living today is wild. The Mulund Society, for example, was promised two 38-story towers with 50% more carpet area, all wrapped up in just 4 years. The reality? Gross financial mismanagement, loan defaults, and a site that is literally still abandoned today, with maybe a third of the work done. And then you have residents like 64-year-old Nita Bhagwat from the Juhu Society. She's had to pack up and move to multiple rented apartments over the last 15 years, getting pushed further and further to the city's peripheries just to afford rent. So instead of a 38-story luxury tower, they're stuck staring at an abandoned hole in the ground.
Moving on to Section 2, the scale of the crisis, Mumbai's redevelopment backlog.
And look, you might be wondering, is this just a few unlucky buildings? No. According to data from Knight Frank India, there are currently 1,094 aging societies caught right in the middle of this redevelopment process. That is over 1,000 individual communities, representing tens of thousands of everyday families, just holding their breath, crossing their fingers, and hoping their builder actually delivers. That number translates to a staggering 432 acres of land that's just waiting to be unlocked. To put that into perspective, once all of this is finally completed, it's estimated to add 59,000 new units to the city's housing stock. So if we step back and look at this analytically, redevelopment is an absolute non-negotiable structural necessity for a dense urban habitat like Mumbai. The city needs this land to modernize, but the sheer volume of projects currently stuck in flux shows exactly how much is on the line here. And the craziest part? This isn't a static problem. It is accelerating incredibly fast. Just look at the explosion in volume since 2020. Back in 2020, we had 73 societies undergoing redevelopment, covering about 18 acres. Fast forward to 2024, we're looking at 263 societies across more than 100 acres. This rapid acceleration means more and more developers are jumping into the game. The market is getting insanely crowded, and consequently, the risk profile for the average homeowner is higher right now than it has ever been before.
Which brings us to Section 3. The redevelopment business model, following the money.
Okay, we absolutely have to define this term because it is the entire beating heart of the business model, the free sale component. See, in these deals, the builder doesn't just build homes for the existing residents. The project allows for additional buildable area, which gets sanctioned through extra floor space index or transferable development rights, which in plain English basically just means the city gives them permission to build higher and denser. The developer constructs this extra area and sells it to brand new buyers at the going market rates. And listen carefully to this part because it's crucial. That free sale component is what funds the entire project and delivers the builder's profit. There's no magical separate pool of money sitting in a vault somewhere.
So in theory, the basic math follows a super straightforward 1, 2, 3 process. Step 1, the society gives their consent. Step 2, the builder gets the rights to build higher. And step 3, the builder sells those extra flats to fund everyone's brand new home. But the problems usually kick off right around step 2. Because to actually win a society's mandate in such a hyper-competitive market, builders aggressively overpromise on what they can actually deliver. They promise massive carpet area increases and huge payouts, essentially placing a massive bet that property prices will just keep rising forever to bail them out later.
Section 4. Why projects stall? When the math stops adding up.
So what actually happens when those tall, aggressive promises inevitably crash into changing market realities? Well, the root causes of these delays are basically a toxic cocktail of bad math and bad luck. First off, you have severe cash crunches caused by those overly optimistic funding assumptions we just talked about. When the property market inevitably cools down even a little bit, the builder's magic money just completely vanishes. Then come the external shocks. For example, some builders conveniently invoke COVID-19 force majeure clauses to just halt construction and completely freeze rent payments to displaced residents. Or, take that Juhu case we discussed earlier, a sudden military radar installation forced new height restrictions on the area. That instantly killed the builder's extra floors and wiped out their profit margins. I mean, you can't exactly fight a military radar. And ultimately, developers often get away with all this chaos because they lock residents into one-sided agreements with practically zero enforcement.
Ghulam Zia over at Knight Frank India really hit the nail on the head regarding this trap. He points out that societies often get entirely seduced by the highest commercial offer on the table. They see that promise of 50% extra space and millions in a corpus fund, and they practically trip over themselves to sign on the dotted line. But actually, scratch that. If the developer lacks the concrete financial strength and the proven track record to execute, that generous offer is completely meaningless. It's literally just a piece of paper sitting in a sunken pit.
Finally, Section 5. Blueprint for a safe rebuild. Protecting the homeowner.
Luckily, we can distill a very clear, actionable blueprint from the source material to empower homeowners against these very real risks. First and foremost, societies absolutely have to align their expectations with reality. This does not happen overnight. A complete project lifecycle takes a very sobering 8 to 10 years. Just getting consensus among residents, picking a developer, and securing the necessary approvals can easily burn through 3 to 4 years before a single brick is even demolished. Patience isn't just a virtue here, it's a structural requirement.
And look, while they're waiting, they must strictly follow a rigorous due diligence checklist before ever handing over the keys to their homes. You literally have to conduct a structural audit and an independent feasibility study so you actually know what your land is worth. You must evaluate the builder's actual financial stability, not just their glossy PowerPoint pitch. You've got to negotiate strict contractual timelines with actual financial penalties. The material heavily emphasizes that ownership of the land and the buildings absolutely must remain with the housing society, not the builder. And finally, residents need to form a project monitoring committee to constantly oversee the progress. You are handing over your most valuable asset. You simply have to do the homework.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. Our cities absolutely have to grow, and redevelopment is undeniably a crucial part of unlocking that vertical progress. But as we've explored today, the cold math of modernization way too often leaves the most vulnerable people paying the highest price. How do we build urban systems that allow our cities to evolve without turning the generational homes of everyday people into collateral damage? It's a massive, complex puzzle, but understanding the realities we've covered in this explainer is the absolute first step toward a safer rebuild. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the blueprints of our future.